Imagine sitting in a quiet room and a thought crosses your mind, a feeling you've had before. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, that deep certainty that your way of seeing things is the only sensible one. We've all been there, holding onto an idea so tightly that any challenge to it feels like a personal attack. It's human nature. But what if that very instinct, that need to be certain and in control, is the very thing holding us back from a deeper kind of freedom? This is where the ideas of a 19th century thinker named Mikhail Bakunin come in, not as some dusty old philosophy, but as a mirror held up to our own minds. Bakunin's core idea is stunningly simple, yet it asks everything of us. He believed that true freedom isn't something given to you by a ruler or a government or any kind of authority. In fact, he argued that all forms of authority, by their very nature, exist to limit your freedom and make you obey. His revolutionary blueprint wasn't about swapping one ruler for another. It was about learning to rule ourselves, together, without anyone being forced to bow down. He wanted to tear down all the artificial structures of power so that a natural, organic society based on free association could flourish. As he himself put it, the passion for destruction is also a creative passion. This isn't a call for mindless chaos. It's about clearing away the old, rigid, and unjust to make space for something new and truly free to grow in its place. Now think about your own life for a moment. Remember when you realized a childhood belief wasn't quite true. Maybe it was about Santa Claus, or that your parents knew everything, or that life would follow a perfect, predictable script. That moment of realization can be jarring. One part of you wants to cling to the old, comfortable story. It's familiar and safe. Another part of you, a deeper awareness, knows you've seen a bigger truth and you can't unsee it. This is the natural tension Bakunin points to. We all have this instinctive thinking that seeks order, certainty, and clear rules. It's the part of us that gets nervous when things are ambiguous or when our beliefs are questioned. It wants a map, a leader, a set of instructions. But we also possess this deeper awareness, a capacity for critical thought and empathy. This is the part of you that questions the map, that wonders if the leader has your best interests at heart, that looks at the instructions and asks, why? Many of us cling to familiar ideas because that instinct for certainty is so powerful and comforting. It's easier to accept the world as we're told it is than to embark on the difficult and sometimes frightening work of questioning everything. We fool ourselves into believing we are free precisely when we are following the path that's been laid out for us, never realizing we are living within walls we didn't build but have learned to never question. Bakunin's principles show us that this isn't just a personal quirk, it's a political reality. The state and all systems of top-down control rely on this very instinct. They encourage that part of us that wants to be told what to do, that seeks a higher authority to blame or to praise. They offer the illusion of security in exchange for our autonomy. We are taught from a young age to respect hierarchies, to not question authority, and to believe that this structure is the only thing preventing total chaos. We are fooled into believing that our obedience is a virtue. But what if the greatest chaos is the violence of inequality, the silent oppression of unquestioned power, and the slow death of our own creative spirit? Bakunin invites us to trust that deeper awareness, that part of us that knows cooperation doesn't require a commander, that community doesn't require a ruler, and that order doesn't require oppression. It's about growing up, collectively, and realizing that we are capable of so much more than just following orders. We can organize our lives based on mutual aid and shared responsibility, not fear and coercion. This cracks open the entire core of the argument, moving us from a simple idea into the complex reality of applying it. We start by seeing the world in a very straightforward way. The problems seem clear, the solutions even clearer. The state is the source of oppression, so the logical, almost knee-jerk reaction is to simply tear it all down. It's a powerful and emotionally satisfying feeling, this initial burst of revolutionary spirit. It's the impulse to smash the machine because we can clearly see it's hurting people. This is where many stop, believing the entire answer lies in that single defiant act of negation. You might be someone who resists change at first, or conversely, someone who demands immediate, total change, because the initial simplicity is so compelling. It feels like the entire answer. But then we enter the confusing middle, the phase where the blueprint gets messy. This is where Bakunin's philosophy truly separates simple rebellion from thoughtful revolution. The knee-jerk reaction is to see authority as a monolith and destruction as the only goal. But the thoughtful response, the one Bakunin advocates, understands that the state isn't just a building you can knock over. It's a deeply embedded system of ideas, a psychological conditioning that lives inside each of us. He called this the authority principle, the internalized habit of looking for a master to obey or to become. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions, and this middle phase is the most uneasy of all, because the old simple answers stop working. We start noticing the state's shadow in our own actions, in our desire for a strong leader to fix things, in our replication of its hierarchies in our own groups and relationships. The challenge is no longer just an external power. It's the internal one we've all inherited. Bakunin saw this middle phase not as a failure, but as the necessary, gritty work of the revolution. The real challenge is building the new world within the shell of the old, not just waiting for a single, explosive event. This is the tough part, where grand theories meet the pavement of daily life. It's easy to declare all property is theft. It's profoundly difficult to figure out how your neighborhood would collectively manage its water supply or care for its elderly without a central authority forcing it. This is where the ideal meets the real, and it can feel overwhelming. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, starting to question not just the obvious oppressions, but the tiny, everyday authorities you've always taken for granted. This hesitation isn't a weakness. It's the first sign of developing a new, more critical consciousness. From this struggle emerges a new clarity, a deeper understanding of what destroying the state actually means. It's not about chaos, it's about dissolution. It's the careful, conscious replacement of coercive external authority with voluntary organic association. We begin to see that the goal is to render the state obsolete by building networks of mutual aid and free federation from the ground up. The thoughtful response moves beyond the knee-jerk desire to merely break and enters the more difficult, more rewarding space of building. It's the difference between angrily quitting a job and patiently working with your colleagues to form a cooperative that makes a boss unnecessary. The clarity comes from understanding that the revolution is a process of daily practice, of learning to relate to one another as free and equal collaborators, without waiting for permission or direction. We start to build the future in the present, not through a single cataclysm, but through a million acts of solidarity and self-determination. This is the ultimate blueprint, a map for a journey that is as personal and internal as it is political and external. Through this discomfort, we begin to notice a subtle shift. It's not that the world outside has changed, but something within us is starting to realign. That constant, low-grade hum of anxiety about what others might think begins to quieten, not with a bang, but like a tide slowly receding. We start to catch ourselves in moments where we're about to make a choice based on an old, worn-out script, the one that says we should please, perform, or perfect. And for the first time, we feel empowered to gently set that script aside. We ask a different question, not what should I do, But what feels true for me? This is where the real work and the real magic begins. This process of questioning is incredibly personal, yet it connects us to a universal human experience. We all carry these internalized rules, these invisible fences we've built around ourselves over a lifetime. Some were given to us by well-meaning parents or teachers. Others, we constructed ourselves for protection in a world that often feels demanding and judgmental. The discomfort we feel is the friction of our authentic self starting to rub against the confines of that fence. It's a good pain, a growing pain. It's the feeling of muscles that have been cramped for too long finally being stretched, aching, but ultimately leading to greater flexibility and strength. We learn to sit with this feeling, to understand it not as a threat, but as a signpost pointing toward growth. As we practice this new way of being, we inevitably stumble upon a fascinating psychological phenomenon that explains so much of our past behavior. It's the reason why those personality quiz results in a magazine felt so eerily accurate, or why we felt a strange sense of recognition when a horoscope described us in broad, flattering terms. This is the Barnum effect, named after the famous showman P.T. Barnum, who knew that a good general statement could feel deeply personal to almost anyone. Our minds are pattern-seeking machines, desperately trying to make sense of ourselves and the world. We latch onto these vague and universal descriptions because they offer a ready-made identity, a prefabricated sense of self that saves us the terrifying work of having to define it for ourselves from scratch. For so long, we might have unknowingly let these broad labels define our narrow realities. If a test told us we were an introvert, we might have avoided social gatherings we would have actually enjoyed. If a zodiac sign said we were stubborn, we might have dug our heels in during an argument simply because it felt like what we were supposed to do. We were living inside a personality that was loaned to us, not one we owned. But now, with this new awareness, we can see the strings. We can appreciate the Barnum effect for the curious trick of the mind it is. And in doing so, we disarm it. We take back the pen and start writing our own description. One based on our actual actions, our real feelings, and our deepest values. Not on a generalized statement that could apply to millions. The most beautiful part of this awakening is how it begins to ripple out into the smallest corners of our daily lives. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier. What to wear, what to eat, how to spend a free hour. These are no longer fraught with the weight of imagined judgment. The choices become simpler because they are sourced from a clearer place within. Do I want this? Do I need this? Does this feel good to me? The mental energy once spent on deliberating over what we should do is freed up, creating a newfound sense of lightness and spontaneity. It's no longer about making the right choice according to some external standard, but about making the authentic choice, which is its own reward. Furthermore, many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The co-worker who always interrupts, the slow-moving line at the grocery store, the sudden change of plans. These minor irritations lose their power to derail our entire mood. Why? Because our sense of self is no longer so fragile. It is not so easily threatened by events outside of our control. When we are secure in who we are, a frustrating event is just a frustrating event. It is not a personal indictment or a sign that the universe is against us. We can sigh, maybe even laugh, and move on with our day, our inner peace remaining largely intact. This resilience is one of the greatest gifts of this journey. This isn't to say we become immune to life's challenges or that we never feel doubt again. The old patterns, the people-pleasing impulses, the critical inner voice, they don't vanish overnight. They are well-worn neural pathways, and they will sometimes light up out of habit. The difference is that now we see them for what they are, just habits, not truths. We can notice the impulse to agree when we actually disagree, and we can choose a different response. We can hear the inner critic start its familiar rant, and we can thank it for its input while firmly deciding not to engage. This is the practice. It's the conscious, daily recommitment to ourselves. And as we practice, we build a new foundation. A foundation not built on the shifting sands of others' opinions or societal expectations, but on the solid ground of our own lived experience and hard-won self-knowledge. This foundation allows us to show up differently in our relationships. We can be more present with our partners because we are not secretly seeking their validation to feel okay. We can be better friends because we can offer genuine support, not help that is contingent on being liked or appreciated in return. We can set boundaries with love and clarity, not with resentment or anger, because we understand that a boundary is not a wall. It is the definition of where we end and another person begins, which is the very prerequisite for true connection. Together we discover that this path, though walked alone in many respects, ultimately leads us back to a more compassionate and real engagement with everyone around us. In freeing ourselves, we give others permission to do the same. We stop demanding that they fit into our boxes of expectation, just as we have stopped trying to fit into theirs. Relationships become less about transaction and more about connection. Conversations become more interesting, more vulnerable, and more human. We are no longer performing roles for each other. We are meeting as we truly are, imperfections and all, and finding that this is where the deepest beauty resides. This entire journey, from the first pang of discomfort to the dawning of a more authentic life, is ultimately about integration. It is about bringing all the parts of ourselves, the strong and the vulnerable, the confident and the scared, back home. We stop exiling the pieces we deem unacceptable and instead welcome them with curiosity and compassion. We understand that our quirks and our so-called flaws are not mistakes to be erased, but essential threads in the unique tapestry of who we are. They are what make us human, what make us relatable, and what make us us. It feels like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. After wearing them for so long, you forgot they were even on. You feel the ground beneath your feet for the first time, solid and real. There's a newfound sense of balance, of freedom, of being fully grounded in your own existence. The relief is palpable, a deep exhale for the soul. You can finally walk your own path, in your own way, at your own pace. The journey is yours alone, but the destination is a place of universal belonging, where we all meet in our beautiful, imperfect, and authentic humanity.